to the Rome Statute, but we do engage with state parties to the Rome Statute on issues of concern, and we do support the ICC's prosecution of those cases that advance U.S. interests, and we've said that many, many times. It's hard for us to characterize the trend qualitatively in terms of the decisions that some of these states are making. As Matt noted, we have expressed concerns in the past. We are certainly watching this trend with concern, no question about it. But ultimately, do there need to be changes or organizational modifications or new policies by the court? Obviously, that's for the court to speak to, and not the United States.
Do you think the court might have a better future if the United States had been a signatory?
It's a great hypothetical, Dave. I don't know, and I think it would be. I think it's a stretch to, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but a stretch to think that the United States membership would make a huge difference here. I don't think anybody can know that. I don't think that we think that would have somehow staved this off. It's just a fact that many African nations feel like they haven't been treated fairly by the court, and that drove some of these decisions. Again, these are sovereign decisions that they're making. I don't know that U.S. membership would have been a tip on the balance there. Because even though we're not signatories, as I said, we continue to support the prosecutions that the court seeks that we believe advance U.S. interests.
It would be easier to defend your position that the court's prosecutions are fair if U.S. was also subject to its jurisdiction.
Well, again, we've been around and around on this issue. We're not signatories. I understand that, but that doesn't mean that we don't. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say the fact of the matter is that we would never get through Congress anyway, so it's kind of moot. It's not an executive branch thing.
No,
it's not an executive branch reason that you're not a member of the court.
Correct.
It's not going to be.
No,
but
correct.
What I'm curious about here is, what do you mean you don't know that the United States membership wouldn't have a role? That's the exact opposite of the argument you make for every other international organization. You're in UNESCO, despite the fact that it keeps voting on anti-Israel measures, because you say that your membership and leadership is important and it will affect things. You're in the whole entire United Nations system, NATO, all these international organizations. The argument that administration after administration has made is that U.S. membership in and support for these organizations is incredibly important. And all of a sudden, with the court, you say the ICC, you say no.
In terms of our not being a party to the Rome Statute. But the question specifically was, do I think that if we were signatories that these departures would not happen? That's an impossible question for me to know the answer
to. Fair enough. Well, let me just say it is. That's the reason. Anyway.
I got it. But the point is, the larger point is, I can't possibly know whether us being a party or not would have an effect. As I said, I can't speak for every country, but it's a public fact that many African nations, those that have decided to withdraw are doing it because they feel like they've been treated unfairly by the court.
Yesterday, Elizabeth said from the podium that the recent resumption of Russian airstrikes in Syria was a breach of international law. What better body to prosecute such a breach of international law than the ICC?
That's one of the reasons. That's one of the purposes of the ICC, isn't it?
But your condemnation of these Russian crimes would be stronger if it came from someone who from a country that was part of the cult.
Again, I'm not disputing that we're not a member, and that, but we also continue to support the work that they do that we believe advances the prosecutions that advance U.S. interests. And again, I can't. Obviously, we don't believe that Russian or Syrian activity is in keeping with international law. The Secretary has said that many, many times, and the ICC would be obviously a body that could deal with that. Yeah.
Is that a fatal blow? I mean, the pulling out of Russia and other countries and so on. Now, do you see the future of the ICC as being doomed, or at least in severe jeopardy? Or
I think that gets to Leslie's.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Question. I think that gets to Leslie's question. I mean, the future of the court is for the court to speak to. I can't. I wouldn't be in a position to say that this decision by Russia is some sort of a death knell for the court. We certainly hope that it isn't.
Mm-hmm. So what would be the alternative? I mean, in your view, you're as a man of experience and so on, what would be the alternative for countries or individuals or societies that are, let's say, under military occupation and so on, as a recourse to go to complain about abuses or even to level charges of...
well, we hope that there... We hope that there doesn't have to be a substitute. I mean, that's what the ICC was established to do, and as we said in the past, we're going to continue to support those kinds of prosecutions, and we want that to be the appropriate venue.
That was an extremely loaded question. So can I just? You're not saying that the U.S. would support a Palestinian case against Israel at the International Criminal Court?
That's not what I'm saying.
All right, because that's what his comment was. That's what his question implied. And the Palestinians have threatened to do that before, but you're not saying that the U.S. would support that. All right.
Can I have a transition question? You've probably seen these reports of President-elect Trump meeting or having discussions with foreign leaders without the presence or any kind of briefings on the U.S. position on these. Is that at all concerning or against any kind of protocol that the State Department
team are making, and it's not our place to inject ourselves into those decisions about who the president-elect is going to speak to and what they're going to discuss. I mean, those are his staff's decisions to make. We, of course, as the Secretary has made clear to the entire department, we of course stand ready to assist the president-elect's team in any way that they deem fit. But as I said, there's been no outreach to date. But it's not for us to approve or disapprove of conversations that the president-elect is having or may have in the future with foreign leaders.
Well, it's not unusual. I mean, the Secretary himself has one-on-one discussions without staff being present or any note takers being present. So it's not unusual. What is unusual is that the president-elect or whatever decisions or discussions are made is not passed on to the State Department, who would deal with bilateral or international diplomacy.
Well, but those are decisions that the president-elect has to make, whether he or his team deems it appropriate to pass on a readout or not. So again, we stand ready to support him and his team with any information that they might require, either in advance of or on the back end of these conversations. But the degree to which they want that context or not is really up to them to speak to.
Was the State Department at all asked, I mean, maybe not unofficially, but to kind of, or from the foreign leaders to try and facilitate that contact?
No.
Did nothing come through the State Department from any, the British or any of those?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So tomorrow the President-elect is meeting with Abe, the Japanese leader. And has anybody reached out to the State Department on any kind of information or clearance or discussions or talking points or anything to do with that meeting?
I'm not aware of any outreach to the department by the transition team with respect to preparing for that meeting, and I'm not aware of any discussions that we've had with the Japanese side either in advance of that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So there's no obligation for an incoming is there?
An obligation to do what?
To get in touch with you about
No.
private conversations between.
No. And it's
So there's no concern.
No,
There's no concern in this building about who he speaks to or what.
well,
he
those
says.
those are his decisions.
I know, but
to
is
make.
there
And,
concern in the?
There's no obligation for them to reach out.
I understand
no,
that.
We don't. I'm not.
I got that, but
I'm
you're
not-
also saying that there's no concern about it.
It's not for us
Okay.
to weigh in one way or the other, Matt. I said we're willing, ready, and able to provide context if it's desired, and thus far there's been none of that contact.
Pence, has signed this memorandum of understanding that can now allow for this transition and this information to occur. Apparently, he signed that last night. So that's the reason I'm asking, and whether there had been any kind of outreach.
Yeah, I've
From
heard
other direction.
reports of the memo being signed. I obviously can't
Yeah.
confirm that, but what I can tell you is, as of this afternoon, there's been no contact by anyone on the transition team. I would just reiterate again that we are fully prepared and ready and willing to receive them when they're ready, and even before that, if they require briefing materials or context for any discussions that they may be having, internally or externally. We're certainly stand ready to assist in any way we can.
Do you have liaison team members sitting by phones, or do they continue with their current jobs until such time as they're contacted?
And we have the State Department counselor, Ambassador Kinney, obviously is our lead for transition issues, and she and her team are again standing by, willing to help in any way. But I wouldn't describe it as like a phone bank.
But do they have other duties, or are they just drinking coffee until?
No, I mean, they all have full-time jobs too.
Full-time jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
We go to Syria.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, can you clarify what is going on in terms of where the Russians are bombing? I mean, some say in Aleppo, but there's no evidence that there's any bombardment of eastern Aleppo by the Russians. There's bombardment of Idlib and Homs and so on the countryside of Homs. So first of all, if you have information on where they are bombing and what is going on there.
Well, I don't have, as you know, Saeed, I don't have specific tactical information about Russian military operations in terms of grid points and locations on a map.
Right.
I would say though that we have seen additional airstrikes now in Syria by Russia and by the regime, to include what has been reported to be, and we have no reason to doubt this because of the sourcing that we're getting, that 5 hospitals and at least 1 mobile clinic in Syria were struck.
Can you say which
By-
city the hospitals were in?
What's that?
Which city were the hospitals in?
I don't have the exact location, but so 5 hospitals and 1 mobile clinic, and by all counts, looks like they were deliberately targeted. all in the span of just the last day or so. To East Aleppo. And the regime and Russia have now let Aleppo's residents starve.
Follow up with a couple of things. The Russian Defense Ministry claims that it is actually the rebels who are, or the terror groups who are holding back the aid. They are disallowing the public from reaching that humanitarian aid. And in fact, they're saying that there was some sort of demonstration by the public, and that was crushed, brutally by the different militant groups and so on. So I want, how do you sort out through all this, this kind of, conflicting information and so on? How do you get your information in this case?
Look, it's a very fluid situation, and our knowledge is imperfect. That's why we say we've seen reports of these things, and I don't have specifics for you. I don't have specific locations. Hang on a second. I'm answering Saeed. We don't have that. I'm saying we've seen these reports, and they fly in the face of everything Russia says it's doing in Syria and specifically in Aleppo. So I don't have, I don't have eaches on this, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to get into that anyway.
So you would refute
but
the claim by the Russians that they have, they've stopped, or they had a moratorium on striking Aleppo, eastern Aleppo, for the past 28 days. In fact, all the while, where the militant groups were striking western Aleppo.
So we've also seen reports that about opposition groups that were limiting or trying to be an obstacle to humanitarian aid and assistance, and we've made it clear to the opposition groups that we communicate with, and certainly to nations who have influence over other opposition groups, that these reports are troubling and concerning, and obviously, to the degree they're true, that obstruction should not occur. That said, it's without question that it is the regime and its Russian backers that have had the times now I've been to this podium talking about the fact that no humanitarian aid's getting into Aleppo, and that hasn't changed. It hasn't changed one bit.
Don't you think it is important to give a specific list of hospitals that you're accusing Russia of hitting? Those are grave accusations.
I'm not making those accusations. I'm telling you, we've seen reports from credible aid organizations that 5 hospitals and a clinic, at least one clinic.
In what cities? At least.
You can go look at the information that many of the Syrian relief agencies are putting out there publicly. We're getting our information from them too. These reports. But you're
citing those reports without giving any specifics.
Because we believe these agencies are credible, and because we have other sources of information that back up what we're seeing from some of these reports. And you know what? Why don't you ask? Well, here's a good question. Why don't you ask your defense ministry what they're doing, and see if you can get? No.
If you give a specific list of hospitals,
no.
My colleagues who are listening hopefully would be able to go and ask Russian officials about a specific list of hospitals that
you work for Russia Today, right? Isn't that your agency?
Correct.
And so, why shouldn't you ask your government the same kinds of questions that you're standing here asking me? Ask them about their military activities. Get them to tell you what, or to deny what they're doing. When I ask for specifics,
it seems your response is, "Why are you here?" Well, you are leveling that accusation.
No, ma'am. are leveling those accusations. So
But
why
you
don't you
agree with
question them about their information and where they're getting it? And why don't you question your own defense
Which
ministry?
organizations then? Which ones?
Well,
Where should I
we'll
look?
get you a list of them after the briefing. I don't have it right here in front of me, but I'm happy to provide to you some of the
And-
relief agencies that are telling us what they're seeing on the
And
ground.
specifically on blocking aid within the 28 days that Russia and Syria had stopped the airstrikes in eastern Aleppo, and I understand they were resumed by the Syrian military yesterday. Can you give any specific information on when Russia or the Syrian government blocked the UN from delivering aid? Just any
There
specific
hasn't been any aid delivered in the last month.
And you believe it was blocked exclusively by Russia and
There's
the
no
Syrian
question
government?
in our mind that the obstruction is coming from the regime and from Russia. No question at all. Ma'am.
I just have,
Hold on. Just when you say, please be careful about saying your defense minister and things like that. I mean, she's a journalist, just like the rest of us are. So it's, she's asking pointed questions, but they're not,
From a state-owned,
but they're not-
from a
but they're-
state-owned outlet.
but they're
Matt,
not-
from a state-owned
the
outlet
questions
that's
that
not
she's asking
independent.
are not out of line.
I didn't say the questions were out of line.
Okay,
I didn't
I
say
mean,
the questions were out
all
of
right,
line.
okay,
But I'm not.
Oh no, I understand.
I'm
but
sorry,
asking-
but I'm not going to put Russia Today on the same level with the rest of you who are
Well-
Do you have
representing
an issue with my
independent
question?
media
Well,
outlets.
hold on, but look, there. Well, we can talk about this later offline. But the question is not an inappropriate question to ask.
Didn't say that it was, but I also think it should be asked of their own defense ministry,
Okay.
which they don't do, which Russia Today doesn't do. Saeed, did you have one?
Iraq. And while you were traveling with the secretary and looking at the seals and the penguins and whatever, we discussed a visit that the U.S. ambassador to Iraq made to Erbil. And he met with Kurdish leaders, and then he gave a press conference, and he said that he was confident Peshmerga forces would withdraw to their pre-ISIS positions. But President Barzani stated today, it was televised and it's being widely tweeted out, quote, "There will be no negotiations, not even negotiations, about territories liberated by Peshmerga forces before the Mosul offensive. There was an agreement on this between the Ministry of Peshmerga and the Pentagon and between the Peshmerga and the Iraqi government." So it seems that the ambassador perhaps misunderstood the substance of his discussions with the Kurdish leadership because they don't agree at all with what he's
Look,
saying.
I think Elizabeth gave a readout yesterday of the ambassador's visit. I can't speak to these comments. I haven't seen them, so I really don't have anything further to add. I guess I have to say it again, but the campaign to liberate Mosul is an Iraqi campaign. And as we've said before, our job is to support that campaign, but it is an Iraqi campaign. And the decisions that have been and will be made about how that campaign is going to be prosecuted, with what forces, who's going to be where, and what they're going to do, those are Iraqi decisions to make. And so, I would refer you to the Iraqi government for how they're going to continue to liberate Mosul, and then what the force disposition is going to look like after it's over.
So if there's an understanding between Baghdad and Erbil about the Peshmerga lines, you don't have any problem with that?
I think we've commented as far as we're going to comment on that right now. Yeah, Jenny.
Thank you, Kirby. United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution on North Korean human rights issues. Is this a final resolution for United Nations?
I mean, I'm not going to speak specifically to. Well, actually, I can. We obviously support the report of the special committee. The third committee, and our longstanding concerns about human rights in North Korea and elsewhere around the world haven't changed. In fact, go look on our human rights report on the website, and you can see it all right there.
Also, another one. U.S. and North Korean delegations have a meeting in Geneva, Switzerland. Do you have anything on that?
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
U.S. and North Korean delegations meeting in Geneva, Switzerland.
You're talking about the Track 2, which again is not
Well,
U.S. government.
not seems like a track 2, but this kind of the delegation from North Korean foreign minister. Do you have anything on that?
I don't. I mean, it's not a U.S. government discussion, and
because she's Chesonishi from North Korean foreign minister.
the North Koreans would have to speak to their participation and who is.
But U.S. delegations, who they are.
But it's not a U.S. government delegation, Jenny, and I don't have anything to add on that.
Can you take vacation?
Can I what?
Can you take vacation?
Can I take the question? No.
Why not?
Because it's not a U.S. government discussion. It's not led by the U.S. government. The U.S. government's not involved in these discussions. We've talked about this before, so it's not for us to speak to.
But the two-track conversation we're going to a government can use this, polish or they use it for the next step.
Are you asking a question or are you making a statement?
Well, you better know about that. They have a premeditated temporary.
I think we've talked about this before. I don't have anything to add. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Jahaz Ali from Airway News TV. Sir, in the last few weeks, there were some terrorist attacks in Pakistan, especially in Quetta. First, they targeted the police cadet training center, then a Sufi shrine, day before yesterday, killing more than 52 people. Sir, how much you are concerned about the expansion of Daesh in that? Because both of the attacks were claimed by the Daesh, ISIS. And secondly, sir, how you see the role of Muslim countries in defeating the ideology of Daesh?
Well, look, I mean, obviously, we're going to continue to stay engaged on counterterrorism efforts in the region. And attacks like that, obviously, are devastating. And all the more evidence that we need to continue to take a cooperative regional approach to dealing with the terrorism challenge there.
Sir, Mr. Trump, the president-elect, during his presidential campaign, announced that if he comes into the power, he's going to change the whole foreign policy. So now he's coming to the White House, and if he changes the whole foreign policy, what would be the impact at the international level?
Well, you'd have to talk to the president-elect and his team. Our job is to implement the foreign policy objectives of this administration. That's what we're focused on, and that's what we'll remain focused on.
Sir, will you be the spokesperson in his administration too?
Will I be the spokesman
Sir, will you be the spokesperson in his administration too?
I'm the spokesman at the State Department in this administration. I have no expectation that
issue?
Yeah.
Okay. Very quickly, yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, spoke to the Jewish Federation of North America via satellite General Assembly, and he told them that he urged the President Obama, not to float any ideas on resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in the last, final weeks of his term. I wonder if you have any comment on that, because I have a follow-up on what he said.
Again, Said, our hypothetical resolutions or other actions by the Security Council. As we've said many times in the past, we're going to carefully consider our future engagement if and when we reach that point, and determine how to most effectively advance the objective we all share in achieving a negotiated two-state solution.
He said something very interesting. He said that, and Israel is becoming more accepted and people thing can't take place. Is he implicitly suggesting, in your view, when he says that no change in current policy of settlement expansion, of continued occupation, will continue for at least another 10 years?
I couldn't possibly.
Did you read what he's... demolition of homes in Bethlehem and Hebron and Jerusalem seems to be, accelerating. It's spiking up. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, we're very concerned about what we believe to be an accelerated rate of demolitions, absolutely, of Palestinian structures in the West Bank and East Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm. And finally, today, the chief Palestinian negotiator, Saeb Erekat, issued a press statement saying that the Israelis this morning about it. I wonder if you are aware, first of all.
I have not seen reports of that, so
Go back to the transition.
Sure.
Not necessarily about, you said there's no contact with the team, but can you talk a little bit about world leaders and their calls and such? Is it typical for the State Department to help arrange through the Ops Center? I think we've heard in the past that it's typical, like President Obama, for instance, the State Department Ops Center was among those who helped.
Has to figure out how they want to do this. There's no, you say typical, it's not like there's a protocol here or a regulation or anything like that. As I said earlier, we certainly stand ready to help provide any information or context in advance of or even in the wake of conversations that the president-elect might be having with foreign leaders. Of
You mean
course,
like a pre-brief? Or
absolutely. If it's requested or desired, we have, as you know, many policy experts, terrific ambassadors all over the world who fully stand ready to provide whatever context is required. But there's no protocol demanding that, and it's not atypical for these conversations to occur without any input from the State Department.
So are you trying to say that like there has been no request for any type of briefings or pre-briefs or anything?
That's correct.
Okay. So is there a typical is there a type of protocol in terms of world leaders in terms of the order or the number or the
I'm sorry?
Is there any type of, there's been a lot of reports perhaps that, the protocol of speaking with world leaders for the president-elect is a little bit haphazard. Usually there's a general protocol of countries that are supposed to come in a certain order. I mean, there's been no talk to the transition about any of this?
I'm not aware of a protocol in terms of the order in which conversations can happen or not. These are decisions that the president-elect has to make in terms of their communication with foreign leaders. Again, I'm not aware of any governing protocol. And no, there has been no contact with the State Department by the transition team on either setting up their transition efforts here at the department or on these communications with foreign leaders.
What about, it's been reported, and I think the transition team has actually said that President-elect Trump will be meeting with Japanese Foreign Prime Minister Abe later this week. Was the State Department asked to give any briefings to himself or any of the team in terms of the issues surrounding Japan and anything for this meeting?
There's been no request. No.
Wasn't that Leslie's question?
It was.
I'm sorry, Leslie.
Okay, thanks everybody.